If you talk to the UCP government, they'll tell you that Alberta is back. When we have a look at the prices of oil, it seems Alberta is back in the black. Naturally, the NDP has a different take on the state of our province. However, for a standard Western view of the welfare of our province, we're going to chat with Dave Naylor, editor of the Western Standard. He joins me from Calgary. Dave, thanks so much once again for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure, Jeannette. Good to see you.
Awesome. Okay, so Dave, possibly the #1 topic here in Alberta, Jason Kenney and his upcoming leadership review in April. Some, possibly many, within the United Conservative Party are looking for a new leader. Do you have any idea of who we'll see come forward to challenge Jason Kenney? What have you been hearing about various groups vying for the power at that top spot?
Well, I think, Jeannette, everybody's waiting to see the results of what happens in this leadership vote, which honestly has just turned into a shambles, debacle, however you want to describe it. They flip-flopped. They were going to have in-person voting in Red Deer. When 13,000 memberships were sold, they decided, okay, no, we'll hold it in 3 separate places over 3 days. And they changed their mind again to a mail-in vote. So it looks like an amateur hour. So I think there are people behind the scenes quietly sort of making moves, I would think, the Doug Schweitzers of the world, but none of them are not coming out publicly because they just want to, just in case Kenney does win, they can't be seen to be trying to stab him in the back already. It's if Kenney does win and he hangs on by a small margin, that's when the fun and games begin.
Yeah, interesting take on that. And of course, you mentioned those mail-in ballots, which were just announced. What do you make of that switch to mail-in ballots instead of voting in person in Red Deer? Like, what was the original plan?
Well, we've seen some internal party polling that shows the case Jason Kenney would have lost if it was an in-person vote. So he did the only thing that he could do. It's basically he controls the board. So the board has decided to hold this mail-in ballot. Jason Kenney is a formidable organizer on the ground. He spent the last couple of weeks touring Calgary's ethnic communities, speaking to small groups as little as 15 or large groups, saying that extremists in the province are trying to replace him. And he's the only one that can save them if he keeps his job. So it's, they just look bad. They waffled. I'm surprised. The only thing worse they could have done was brought in the Dominion voting machines from the U.S. But it's just a mess, Jeannette. It looks just awful on the party. As you know, Kenney has vowed to stay with 50% plus one. If he does win, I think you'll see a whole bunch of floor crossings through disgruntled MLAs. Jason Steffen wrote us a column in today's Western Standard saying Kenney must go. Peter Guthrie, an Airdrie MLA, has said Kenney must resign. So if he stays, I think these people are going to go, and they're either going to join Todd Loewen and Drew Barnes and independents and form their own party, or form their own regional UCP group or rural conservative group, however it works out.
You just mentioned those two, Todd and Drew Barnes. Do you think that they deserve to be brought back into the UCP, or what do you make of that?
Well, it's not going to happen as long as Jason Kenney is the leader. Loewen sort of started the open revolt by posting a letter on Facebook saying, Kenney must go. Drew Barnes has been a constant side in Kenney's constant thorn in Kenney's side since the party was elected. So I don't see them going back into the UCP caucus. If Kenney loses and whoever else takes over the leadership can make that decision, I guess, or Todd and Drew can sort of make peace offerings if they like.
Do you think Jason Kenney deserves to be replaced?
Well, I mean, he's going around the province now saying Alberta's back, prices are booming, companies are coming here. But I don't know if he's got the ability to get people over their anger. They're angry at the at the COVID lockdowns, the repeated back and forth. The Jason Kenney who says, I'll never bring in a vaccine passport, to the Jason Kenney who says, well, here's my vaccine passport. So UCP members are just so disappointed. He was elected and everybody thought he was going to do great things. The Fair Deal panel turned out to be a fiasco. All they've done is set up boards and more studies. And no matter what they do, the NDP is holding a commanding lead. So the only way that the UCP has a chance of defeating Rachel Notley, and we're only a year away from the next election, right, Jeannette? So the only way the UCP has a chance is if they replace Kenney. I don't see them winning at all if he stays.
I know you mentioned the NDP, of course. So the NDP seems to have hopes for that no confidence vote on the budget. Rumor has it that they're hoping for the support of 18 members to show that caucus has lost confidence in their leaders. So what do you make of that? Well,
I mean, it remains to be seen until the vote is called or the vote is taken. It's just growing. It's splitting the party apart. Jason Kenney, in his actions right now, is going to destroy the UCP. It's coming apart at the seams as we speak. We can all see it happening on a daily basis. The crisis is just getting worse. I don't really understand why Kenney cannot see the writing on the wall and take a graceful exit and say, all right, well, you can either resign or you can say, okay, let's have a leadership contest and I'm going to run. And again, you've got to remember that he's very formidable on the ground. So that may be an option for him. He may even call that before the vote is to take place. And he could just say, okay, that's it. I've heard you guys want a leadership review. Let's do it. I'm in it and I'm going to win it.
What kind of future is there for the UCP if Kenney stays on as leader? I mean, you're kind of alluding to the fact that there is no future.
Well, I mean, I don't think there is. I mean, right now, you look at Calgary. Calgary's been conservative country for decades, and the NDP could sweep this city in the next election. All the polls say they're leading everywhere, including in Kenney's riding. The NDP will sweep Edmonton. It's only rural areas where the UCP is polling anywhere half decently, and they've got the Wild Rose Independence Party nipping at their heels. And depending on who you talk to, Wild Rose has got support of 15%, 20% of rural voters. So in the election, they become a real threat too to split the right vote and possibly even get themselves an MLA or two.
Yeah, we've heard that Kenney is still under police investigation from 2017. Can you talk about that a little bit? And how do you think this will factor into the leadership contest?
As you know, the RCMP doesn't exactly move with lightning speed. They're still investigating the so-called kamikaze campaign in 2017, where he allegedly convinced a candidate called Jeff Callaway to run and then withdraw and throw his support to him, and in an effort to keep out Brian Jean. I don't think the investigation is anywhere close to being done. But keep in mind, Brian Jean is now an elected UCP MLA, so he can do a lot of damage now that he's working from within the party as opposed to sniping from the sidelines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned Brian Jean there, of course, newly elected. What was your take on those results of that Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo by-election?
I think it just shows you how popular Brian Jean is in Fort McMurray. I think there was a combination of that. I think there was a combination of an anti-Kenney vote there. But keep in mind, Brian Jean's been elected up there for, as federal MP, as a provincial MLA. He's well-known. He's a local boy. The Wild Rose Independence Party, they dropped in their leader, Paul Hindman, and he didn't do very well, getting only about 10% of the vote, and the NDP also trailed. So it came as no surprise to me, Jeannette.
Do you think that Jean could be one of those that could go up against Kenney in the future?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. I think, Kenney has already said, Jean's already said he's going to run. Doug Schweitzer, certainly Casey Madhu would probably be a candidate. I'm sure there's a lot of cabinet ministers right now just putting out quiet feelers just to see what kind of support they get.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of our oil and those who want our Alberta petrochemicals. So the pipelines, of course, won't build themselves, but is there any light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, to get more of Alberta's oil through a newly constructed pipeline?
Well, there's always the Trans-Canada pipeline, which is hopefully going to be constructed. It's just becoming almost unaffordable to fill up with gas. I paid $70 this week to fill up my little Honda Civic.
Wow.
God knows what people with pickup trucks and SUVs, I just don't know how they're going to do it. Premier Kenney has announced that as of April 1st, they're going to stop collecting their part of the gas tax, which will save Albertans 13 cents. But the same day, hey, guess what? There's a new Justin Trudeau carbon tax coming in that's going to take away a lot of the good news from that hike. So Alberta's got the oil. We just have no way to get it out to the people that need it, other than just more and more rail cars.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned Trudeau, so let's talk a little bit about federal politics. So a bit has happened in Parliament since the weekend of police violence and the truckers leaving Ottawa. So now it seems that Justin Trudeau can talk and negotiate at least with the NDP. So what do you make of that relationship between Liberals and the NDP?
Well, I think it's probably Jagmeet Singh's theory is that this is as close to power as I'm going to get. And Trudeau's thinking, well, you know what? This is going to keep me in power for years to come. So it's basically a win-win situation for both of them. We've already seen some of the fallout with a $5 billion Dentacare program that's going to be seen as NDP pushed, where families under $70,000 in earnings will get free dental care for their kids. Significant law coming to ban replacement workers. These would be the so-called scabs that companies use to keep operations going while on the strike. Those are now going to be illegal thanks to this NDP alliance. So I guess it's how the voters are going to buy it, Jeannette. I mean, there's going to be a lot of NDP voters angry about it because hey, they didn't vote for Justin Trudeau. And same with the Liberal Party, and the Conservatives are probably a little bit relieved because it's going to give them some time to get their leadership in order and get their name and brand out across the country. But and Trudeau's currently now in Europe making a fool of our country, so it's going to be it looks like 3 more years of sunny ways.
Right. So, do you think the Liberals are actually looking for that collaboration with NDP, or was it just a matter of sort of convenience for the Liberal Party?
Well, I think the bottom line is it keeps them in power. The NDP has promised that they're not going to vote against them in any confidence motion. So the Liberals now know that they can basically do whatever they want to do without fear of them calling an election. So again, the NDP doesn't want another election at the moment. Jagmeet Singh is not doing very well in the polls. The party's not doing very well financially. So the last thing the NDP wants right now is an election. So I think it just works out as a marriage of convenience for both of them.
Yeah, kind of a symbiotic relationship there.
Exactly.
Is there a date in mind as to when that relationship may come to an end, or are they just going to see it right through?
No, it's good to go for the entire length of this Parliament. I mean, the NDP or the Liberals can break it off at any point. You remember BC Greens had a alliance with John Horgan as Premier, and he broke that and called an early election and pretty well decimated the Greens in BC. So for me, if you're the lower party in the coalition, during the next election, things tend not to work out so well for you. But at this point, there's no reason for either of those parties to break the agreement. But the day is a long time in politics, Jeannette. Who knows what tomorrow will bring?
So true. Dave Naylor, thank you so much for your time and conversation today. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Jeannette.